I'm grateful to be joined today by a fellow podcaster, Michele Tafoya, to go through some of the biggest stories in the news. Michele, thank you so much for joining me again.
Oh, it's good to be with you. Thanks for inviting me.
So since you and I spoke last, Donald Trump has been named the winner of the election. What were your thoughts? What was your initial reaction?
You know, relief that the whole thing was over, first of all. And quite honestly, there were weeks leading into it that I thought this was going to be a landslide. And I thought if it's not a landslide, then I've really misread something. And it was. And I think there is so much to be learned. But I think primarily there were a couple things. People were tired of feeling unsafe in America. They didn't like what was going on at the border and the crime that they were seeing as a result of that. And I've learned since that a lot of people really still don't know. They're not aware of what's gone on. Anecdotally, I've spoken to people who've never heard of Rachel Morin or Laken Riley. So it's amazing to me still how so much information was not out there. I think the other thing is, you know, in addition to policy like inflation and security and foreign policy, I think this was a referendum on wokeness and people feeling like they were constantly being lectured about whom they were supposed to feel were victims, about whom was toxic. And I think it got pushed so hard that people finally just, you hear this word a lot, people were saying, enough. I'm not that person you paint me out to be. And I'm starting to think that Trump isn't either. And I think he and his son Barron made some very good podcasting decisions that exposed him to people in a way that they haven't seen or heard him before. And she, Kamala Harris, was incapable of doing the same.
Yeah, I agree. It really humanized the former president. It made you realize this is a guy that loves golf. This is a guy that loves music. This is a guy who lives for business. He loves talking about business. He loves to talk about family. He loves to talk about America. They did an excellent job early on. Probably being, you know, a podcaster myself, I kept thinking, you know, these rallies are great, but I can reach 40,000 people in the first hour of my show.
Yeah.
Trump would certainly be able to get millions and millions of views. And then he did that X, whatever they call it, an X broadcast or something with Elon.
Right.
And, you know, gets 1 billion interactions. And it was like, okay, wow, wait a minute. We need to get on the podcast more. But yeah, Barron Trump played a large part of that. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but I've heard that in 2016, Donald Trump was the biggest middle finger America could send to Washington, D.C. And I think they might have sent that back again. They are so sick and tired of Washington, who's out of touch, doesn't know what the average American is living through, going through, worrying about, up at night about, sitting at the kitchen table talking about. And Donald Trump, even though he's a billionaire, he seems to understand blue collar workers, American workers. Why do you think that is? Why do you think blue collar Americans were able to relate to a billionaire?
That was the big question in 16 as well. Like, how did this guy do? I think it's the way he talks. I think it's the way he comports himself. I think he's spent a lot of time around job sites. After all, he's a builder. He's met a lot of builders. He's, grew up in Brooklyn, I think, or the Bronx, grew up in New York, and in a really, wealthy, sure. But I think just interacted with so many people. You can be rich and be really in touch with the average Joe. And I mean, I know a lot of just salt of the earth people who have a lot of money. So, but I really do think it came down to the way he speaks, and it's just really kind of direct, in your face, no holds barred. It's common language, and there's no wokeness to it at all. And listen, I know the term woke has sort of gotten abused because it meant one thing. It's turned into this big umbrella term, but that's what it is. So we'll use it. Listen, you said it about DC. I think, in 2016, it was drain the swamp. And now here we are in 2024. And it's more like, not only drain the swamp, but could you please get men out of women's sports? Could you please stop telling us it's our responsibility to pay for room and board and food and phones for illegal immigrants? Could you please stop telling us that men are just toxic and women are all oppressed? Listen, and I have dear, close friends who are in that group who, even as soon as a week after the election, are still saying, what's going to happen to abortion? Am I going to lose my rights? And it's like, they scared the hell out of you. The left decided to use that, but it is not the average family's big concern. You're right. And trying to paint this man who said he would veto an abortion ban, national abortion ban, trying to paint him as, him and JD Vance. Yeah. Are they pro-life? Perhaps. Melania's not. I'm pro-choice. I didn't buy any of this BS. So I think that people were just pushed as far as they could be pushed.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you don't think most Americans realize just how bad it is on the southern border. You and I cover this. We see it. To think about 15 million, that's more than 30 of the continental United States population flowing in, people that are, trying to get on Social Security. They're into the welfare systems. They're getting free care at hospitals. Their children are being put into the school systems, not speaking English. I mean, it is infiltrating like cancer. And now they plan to pull on this and yank it out as quickly as possible. How do you see this going? Trump has just announced Tom Homan, former ICE chief, is going to be the new border czar. This guy, he is a no holds barred,
right,
won't mess around guy. You think they shut the border and then start going after everyone? How do you see this thing going?
Yeah, I think likely they will put a temporary close on all border crossings, all of them. This is my guess. And then, yes, go after the criminals first. We know there are criminals here. They haven't been dealt with because there are so many soft on crime policies and sanctuary cities that protect these criminals. Look, no one is saying that all illegal immigrants are criminals, but a bunch of them are. And some are even terrorists, and God knows what they're here to do. So we have to be very careful about the way that we pursue this. I think, again, people are imagining this sort of Nazi military force marching through the streets, knocking on doors. I don't think that's going to be necessary, because I think that, when you start with the criminals, and there are very surgical ways to do this, and then they must be very careful, because the minute they separate a family, or take a child or a mom or whoever away from the family, the optics of that are going to be horrible. And so there has to be a really delicate balance as to how they do this. But for as much as Trump speaks to the everyman and uses sort of that, that sort of rogue language of, we're going to get them all out of here. Look, that's the language he uses. But I think the approach he's going to use is not going to be what people think, detention camps and all of this stuff. I think that was all really hyped up, and someone looked at me and said, but he said that. I never heard him say detention camps. He has talked about perhaps putting some military forces at the border to calm things down there, or to stop the flow of people, or to help vet, because clearly there aren't enough people down there, and it's just the job wasn't getting done. So there we go. I think they do have to be careful with the optics, but my guess is they will be.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they're going to do their best, but this is him making that announcement that they're going to cover the northern border, southern border, maritime, aviation. I mean, here's the thing: right away, you stop flying hundreds of thousands of illegals in on taxpayer money.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing is you say, hey, no more benefits, no more phones, no more food, no more free shelter. You cannot have $21,000 a month in luxury hotel costs while the average person is getting $1,300 in Social Security. I think you start cutting these things off, and like they say, you use the proper cheese to lead a mouse where you want them to go. I think a lot of them are going to say, hey, I need help getting out of here. Where do I go to go back home? I think you'll see a lot of people self-select. I need to take just a 45-second break. Do you owe back taxes? Pandemic relief is now over. Along with hiring thousands of new agents and field officers, the IRS has kicked off 2024 by sending 5 million Americans letters telling them, pay up or else. So I want you to understand something. Do not waive your rights and speak with the IRS on your own. They are not your friend. Tax Network USA, a trusted tax relief firm, has saved over $1 billion in back taxes for their clients, and they can help you secure the best deal with the IRS. Now, whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, they can help you. Whether it's business or personal taxes, even if you have the means to pay or you live on a fixed income, they can help you finally resolve your tax burden once and for all. I want you guys to call 800-958-1000 for a free private consultation. Again, call their 800 number or visit tnusa.com/Gardner. Okay, back to the interview.
That's going to be an interesting part of all this. And it's funny. Someone said to me earlier, it's going to cost a fortune to deport all these people. Well, where was your concern about expenses when they were flying people in? And when Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, was giving them cash cards, with which to buy groceries and pay for all of the stuff that they're paying for. When did people complain about the money being spent on free housing and also all the additional things, resources that were needed to sustain these people? I think it's really rich, no pun intended, or maybe it is, for people to start saying, oh, it's going to be so expensive to do this. Did you look at any of the costs of these people coming in the first place? It's doubtful.
Yeah, you think about 3 meals a day times 30 days. That's 90 meals per person, times 15 million.
Yeah.
You look at $700 a night. I can't imagine a plane ticket is going to be more expensive than what we're spending on, an illegal immigrant within a day. And then Trump has said, listen, you guys can apply and come back in, but your first act of coming to America can't be breaking the law.
Right.
And we also don't know who people really are. Now, the one area where I don't know how they'll be able to control the optics, but Trump and Tom Homan have both let the cartel know you're going to be labeled a terrorist organization. Yeah. The U.S. military is going to come after you. We're going to have military on the border, U.S. Navy in the waters. What do you think about that? You think they just have to come down hard?
Absolutely. Look, there's something my dad taught me a long time ago. It's called peace through strength. And look, these drug cartels deserve no respect from any of us. They deserve no leniency from any of us. We know what these drug cartels are made of. We know what they're doing to these people. We know about the trafficking. We know about kids being molested. We know about women being raped. It's disgusting what happens. So there has to be zero tolerance for these drug cartels. I absolutely agree. Look, we can find many examples of how they appear to be terrorists. So yeah, I do think they need to come down hard. When I was a kid growing up, and when I was young, and Reagan was president, my dad worked in the aerospace industry. And part of what he did was design missiles for nuclear, rockets, etc. And I couldn't understand, Dad, how could you possibly be involved in this? And he looked at me. By the way, this is my Hispanic dad, the son of legal immigrants who came to this country over the southern border. And he said to me, there's something called peace through strength. You have to show that you can win this fight always, so that no one picks the fight to begin with. So yeah, there has to be some of this. You know what? We said this is what we were going to do. We're going to do it. So, it's got to be done in a humane way, of course. But listen, anyone who is here who has committed a crime, or anyone who is here who has yet to commit a crime, but committed a crime in another country and wasn't vetted, or is associated with any kind of criminal gang or terrorist group, out immediately.
Yeah. But Michele, they've only taken over a few apartment buildings.
Yeah,
just a few.
One of the best lines of the candidacy of JD Vance was, do you hear yourself, Martha? Do you hear yourself? It was so potent and so powerful.
That should be a t-shirt. Do you hear yourself, Martha?
It should be. It absolutely should be.
Yeah. Under the Biden administration, it's believed that there has been at least 350,000 deaths from fentanyl. Many of them children. 300,000 children are missing. I don't even want to guess at how many women were violated on their way up through Mexico and other parts of South America,
and are now being ordered online for a quick, I want her to be foreign. I want her to have this bust size. I want her to have this waist size and these color eyes. Send her now. She'll be there in 15 minutes at your door, being trafficked.
Yeah. It like all of that has to end. Mm-hmm. And, I don't want to see a war between Mexico and America, but I believe Trump and his team, they're going to have to be hard on them, whether they use tariffs or the military. America can just not allow a neighboring country to facilitate. I don't even think it's, bad people from Mexico coming. It's from 150 nations.
Exactly.
They just happen to be funneling up through Mexico, but
Correct.
Mexico can now do their part, or else it's going to be very, very difficult to do business with the United States of
Absolutely.
America.
And they're a massive trading partner, so they got to make it hurt.
Yes. Yeah. Trump made perhaps one of the best announcements of his future presidency. He says Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo will not be a part of the second Trump administration. She served as a U.S. ambassador. Mike Pompeo was Secretary of State, later head of the CIA. Do you think that this is his, first shot across the bow, or his first line of defense of, I'm not going to interact with the deep state, and part of getting you to go away will be not interacting with you, not allowing you into the Trump administration?
I really wish I knew exactly what was in his heart and his thinking about all of this. And I think he's getting some really good advice from a lot of really good people. Obviously, he never asked Nikki Haley to appear with him anytime during the campaign. There is a real rift there. There is obviously a rift with Mike Pompeo as well, though. I wish, again, like I said, I wish I really understood. And I had an opportunity recently to interact with Mike Pompeo and his wife. They were very gracious, lovely people. The occasion was not one where you bring up, so what's going on with you and Trump? So yeah. I didn't, but I think he is drawing some lines. I think he's going to find some really creative new ways with different kinds of people that are going to go help him get his agenda done. And for whatever reason, he's lost trust in those two.
Today's economic environment is still really stressful for a lot of us, but with the Fed finally dropping rates, there is no better time than now to put you and your family in a better financial position. If you're a homeowner, American Financing is helping thousands of families just like you who have been putting everyday expenses on credit cards get out from underneath the debt by tapping into their home's equity. American Financing is saving their borrowers over $800 a month on average. $800 a month is like $10,000. Now, it costs absolutely nothing to find out how much you can save. They are closing some in as little as 10 days. And if you start today, you may not have to make the next 2 mortgage payments. There is no better time than now to turn your situation around. I want you to reach out to my friends at American Financing. Call 888-686-8030. That's 888-686-8030. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net/Gardner. all right, let's get back to this interview. And it may just be he doesn't believe that his MAGA base would appreciate them.
That may be. That could be.
It could be, because I have heard him say good things about Mike Pompeo. I've never heard him say a bad thing about Pompeo. The only negative I really saw him talk about with Nikki Haley was just that she challenged him during the presidential election. That was about it. Other than that, again, I think that this may be him going, wait a minute, nearly 70 million people put their trust in me. These were two names that have been brought up. I've got to distance myself from them. But again, I've never really heard too many negative things about the two individuals.
I would go along with that. I would say you're probably right on both of those counts. So I think maybe he's trying to just get further away from what's considered the establishment.
Yeah. That could be it. So, okay. Trump held his first call with Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. Now, within the last 48 hours, he's spoken with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. He told Zelensky, Ukraine must concede and seek peace. There's no more American money. There's no American blood being spilled in this war. To Putin, he warned, do not escalate. There's a lot of U.S. military presence, but we don't want to be involved. We just want to help you bring this to an end. But now I'm reading that the Pentagon and the Secretary of State's office, they're mad at Trump for moving quickly and not involving them. What are your thoughts on his interactions with these two presidents, and also now the Pentagon and Secretary of State being agitated with him?
Well, of course, everyone in the current administration is going to be agitated with Trump, no matter what he does. There's a phrase that's keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And when people have talked about Trump being goo goo gaga over dictators, I don't think that's what this is. He can flatter them all he wants. I think that's part of keeping your enemies closer. I truly do. I've always thought that. And I've thought that was smart. If you want to be able to work with and potentially manipulate these people, you've got to have some sort of a relationship. So that takes care of Putin. As far as Volodymyr Zelensky, is that a readout that you just read? Is that like an official readout of his call with Zelensky?
Well, I covered it last week on my show and Zelensky said it was a really great call. Of course, he's pushing back on conceding territory. But according to the reports of the call between them, yes, Trump did say, why is America paying for a European war? Europe, why are you continuing to push this? Like, let's just be done with this. But I did read, no American blood to be spilled and no more American money. The last thing was, he said, you're welcome to buy U.S. military equipment, but not with our money.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Hey, let's remember one other facet of Trump's personality, character, or his business acumen. He's a negotiator, right? He's a negotiator. And negotiators generally start with a low ball, and then they negotiate from there. So he can say things publicly, and maybe he means it. Maybe he doesn't want to send another dollar. Maybe they think there's been too much sent over there. Certainly, a lot of Americans feel that way, as though too much money has gone to the Ukraine. And you have to wonder why this thing why this money just keeps going, and it doesn't seem to be leading to any kind of success. I have heard Zelensky say recently he remains frustrated with the Biden administration that the Biden administration won't let Ukraine fire deeper into Russian territory. I don't know who the Biden administration is to put those constraints, but I guess they're saying nothing more from us, not a penny more if you go deeper into Russia. So this is all very complex, and there's a lot of money involved. And I tend to believe Trump when he says he can end this thing. I don't know if he's going to end it in days, but the guy, there was no war. He wanted to end the Afghanistan war. That was not of his making. this Russia thing, it was during Obama, they went in, and during Biden, not during Trump. And then October 7th happened under Biden, not during Trump. So Trump does have a way of managing to keep the peace. And I would expect that to go on.
Yeah. The other thing that was really interesting is during the call with Zelensky, he shifts his focus away from the war, and he starts telling Zelensky, we need to rebuild your beautiful cities with your golden domes. And like, it's time to build now. Let's quit wrecking and start building. And then with Putin, he says, we don't want any more Russians to die. So he makes it about death, and he makes it about their beautiful culture. Yeah. I think he's coming in. I don't know that he's coming in with an iron fist, because they can certainly say, no, we're not going to do that. So I think he's trying to work his way to the table so that he can negotiate, where the Biden administration, they've not had a phone call with Russia in almost 24 months.
What does that tell you? You know, look, this is the same kind of approach Trump took with North Korea. Look at your beautiful land. The real estate here is astonishing. You should turn this into a beautiful place where tourists can come and visit. You know, who would have thought you'd speak to Kim Jong-un that way? But he did. And he makes it aspirational. It's why it kind of cracks me up that everyone's painting this picture of women being oppressed and you know, these camps for immigrants and Nazism and all the rest, when really I think this president-elect is aspirational and wants things to be good for everyone. He wants prosperity for everyone. I certainly feel that way in what I see in him. And so I think that's a really, really interesting and unique approach. Here's what things could be like for you. Why would you turn away from this?
Yeah, because on the Russian side, he probably knows that Putin's under pressure to have no more deaths. And on the Ukraine side, like, we need to rebuild your culture before you run out of men to make babies and things like that. But the example of Kim Jong-un is a really good example, because he goes over there, like you said, and he just tells them, like, listen, we're not going to war with you. Why don't you take a vacation? Like, enjoy, look at this beach. It's beautiful.
Yes, look at the beach.
You go lay on the beach. You know, like, you don't need to be at war with America. You know,
it really is interesting, because everyone thought he was going to start World War III, and we didn't come close. You know, I truly do think he wants a sunny, bright future, not only for America but for the world. For America first, for sure, but. Why wouldn't you? I don't, you know, everyone thinks he's just this power monger. I think he genuinely sees himself as someone who can negotiate the deals that need to be made to bring about peace and prosperity.
Yeah. Just touching on that America First agenda, the other thing that he said was when he gets back in office, any money the Biden administration has already set aside, he's taking possession of that. And he's going to use it on veterans and ending homelessness in America. Mm-hmm. And he was saying, with the amount of money that we have spent, we could have ended homelessness and put all of the veterans into beautiful housing. Mm-hmm. What a waste of money. What a waste of human life. So he's already taking that money and saying, we're going right back into America to benefit our American brothers and sisters. So it's going to be really interesting to see what his first 100 days are like, how the mainstream media fights him, how the Democrats fight him. I mean, Nancy Pelosi.
The resistance.
Yeah, the resistance, right. Like Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, they're not just going to roll over. They're going to be, they're hatching some kind of a plan. We just know it. In our final minutes together, I wanted to get your thoughts on Kamala Harris. She's left the Democrat Party $20 million in debt. They spent $1.3 billion in 100 days, much of that on Hollywood celebrities, concerts, over $500 million on staff in 100 days. Now I'm reading that Trump spent about 1/6 of that cost.
Yeah.
Is that because she runs she runs money like the government and he runs money like a business?
Probably. I mean, they got so much earned media. It was unbelievable. Trump did. And he didn't pay Joe Rogan to go on his podcast for 3 hours, whereas the Kamala Harris campaign paid Who's Your Daddy or She's Your Dad or whatever that is podcast to go on $600,000 to go on there. So yeah, you got to wonder about who is managing all of this money. And I think it's a beautiful sort of last little in your face by saying, you know what, we've still got money left over from our campaign. We'll pay off your debt, Kamala Harris. We'll take care of that for you. We're good. Look, for 3 years, Kamala Harris was the least popular vice president in American history. She was the vice president to a man who was equally unpopular. When she stepped in, it was done in a way that was not really democratic. And everyone just said, oh, okay. Oh, joy, 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 joy. And the talking points were so redundant. The joy one, this is a joyful campaign. It is joyous. Then she came out rip-roaring in her debate, and everyone thought, oh, uh-oh, that was strong, until every next public appearance, of which there were very few, used the same, I come from a middle-class family. We take pride in our lawns. And then they realized this was like a robotic. It's the furthest thing from Trump. Trump is just authentically who he is, and everyone knows him, good, bad, or indifferent, the good, the bad, and the ugly. They know all of it. And I think that's why they trust him a little bit more, because he doesn't care what you think of him. And even when he got shot at in that iconic moment, which honestly was like nothing I've ever seen, when he fight, that was remarkable. I don't know if the election had happened the next day, it would have been an even bigger landslide. I think. So that was a real moment, but I think this was inauthenticity versus authenticity, a lack of sincerity, a lack of real substance, and just, if you don't vote for me, you're racist and you're sexist. And by the way, we're going to use this abortion card, which worked in 2022, but we're further away from that now. We're seeing how abortion is making its way through each individual state. And quite frankly, inflation and safety, public safety. And I will say even the Jewish population who felt disenfranchised by Democrats, those all became much bigger kitchen table issues than abortion. And I don't think most people who voted for Trump really believe that this Project 2025 thing is anything that's even going to come close to reality.
Yeah. Comedian Bill Burr went on Saturday Night Live over the weekend, and he gave this great monologue about Trump. He's not a fan of Trump, but he said, the guy is just so crazy and unpredictable. He gets shot in the head and stands up and starts yelling at the gunman, fight. He's yelling in the direction of the guy that just shot him. He's like, this guy is crazy, but I'm glad to have the election behind us,
Gotcha.
It was a pretty good monologue. If you have time to go watch, I would show it here, but I'm sure I would get hit with a copyright. But
oh dear, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what their next game plan is, because my understanding from researching was none of the top Democrats in office wanted to become president. I'm talking like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries. Anyway, there were 6 of them, and they went to all of them. Will you run? If we opened up a Democratic primary, would you put your name for it? None of them wanted to run. Gavin Newsom didn't want to run. So, I mean, the only reason I can think that they stuck with Kamala is the $250 million attached to Biden-Harris could go to her. Other than that,
right.
They didn't tell the public. No one wanted the job.
Right. And you can understand it, right? Why would you want to go against Trump and risk your political future? I think you're right in a way that she was almost like a sacrificial lamb. Let's get this over with. If we lose, we lose. You now hear Democrat operatives and fundraisers who are furious because they were told for sure she's going to win. Get your donors to donate, write those checks. And yet the really deep, I guess, legitimate polls, the ones that are paid for, showed there was no way, showed that Trump was going to win this thing in a landslide. And so a lot of people feel very bitter at the Democrat Party. And I don't blame them. But, look, she ends up being a sacrifice. Those who say that Kamala's going to come back and run, no way in hell. She's no one can trust her to make a good decision after she chose the governor of my state, Tim Walz, to be her running mate. No one has any confidence in this woman at all. 4 more years isn't going to help her.
Yeah. I think her political career is dead. She may get a job on a Democrat-focused charity board, or maybe go try to run for something in California. But who knows? She might also move to Canada and become a middle-class Canadian, just like her childhood.
And she can focus on her lawn.
Yes. Gosh. Well, Michele, this has been fun. I always enjoy having the opposite of what Mark Cuban says, dumb, weak women. I like powerful, intelligent women, have their own brain. You certainly have so much to add to the conversation. If people want to follow you online, where can I point some traffic towards?
Well, definitely on X at Michele with 1 L _Tafoya, Tafoya, the Michele Tafoya podcast, anywhere that you download podcasts, YouTube, wherever. We are there, and I always appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you. It's a lot of fun. And how about Susie Wiles, the first ever woman to be named a chief of staff? How about that, Mark Cuban? Are you still there, buddy?
Yeah, I like how it took Mark Cuban conceding the race for Kamala. I think the highest point of joy in her campaign was when she lost and refused to speak to her people. She just went home the night of the election because she couldn't face them. It's so sad. And
that her communications director would actually suggest that Biden resign so that she could be the first female president, and it would absolve her from the transfer of power on January 6th, because she couldn't possibly handle that pain.
Yeah.
This is that party.
This is the wacky party. So, well, thank you for coming on. I'm going to put those direct links down below so people can find you easily. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You as well. Thanks a lot.